Welcome to U.S. Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: Trump branded Donald Duck as Republican candidate snubs debate. Republican donors turn to Nikki Haley as best candidate to beat Trump. Tory MPs criticize Sala Braverman's alarmist speech on migration. Travis King touches back in U.S. after being expelled from North Korea. Oil climbs to $97 a barrel as rally continues. Trump branded Donald Duck as Republican candidate snubs debate. The Independent. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie attempted to give Donald Trump a new nickname, Donald Duck, during the second presidential debate. The comments were met with mixed reactions and were widely mocked online. Despite the jokes, Christie appeared to double down on the nickname by tweeting a Donald Duck gif. Other candidates also took aim at Trump during the debate, criticizing his absence and his record. Trump, meanwhile, hurled his own nicknames at his political rivals during a separate event. It remains to be seen whether the nickname Donald Duck will stick. Republican donors turn to Nikki Haley as best candidate to beat Trump. Telegraph. Republican donors are considering switching their support from Ron DeSantis to Nikki Haley as they search for a candidate who can take on Donald Trump. Impressed by Haley's recent campaigning and performance in the debates, donors are keen to donate to her campaign. Haley is seen as more electable than DeSantis and has gained popularity with her strong general election pitch. However, even if she overtakes DeSantis, she faces the challenge of beating Trump, who is currently leading the Republican field by a wide margin. Tory MPs criticize Sala Braverman's alarmist speech on migration. The Guardian. UK Home Secretary Sala Braverman has been criticized by Conservative MPs for suggesting that being gay or a woman and fearing discrimination should not be enough to qualify as a refugee. Braverman made the comments during a speech in Washington, D.C., which was seen as a warning that the government could leave the European Convention on Human Rights if its scheme to remove migrants who arrive by small boat is blocked by the Supreme Court. Conservative MPs Bob Neill and Tobias Ellwood expressed concerns about the rhetoric used by Braverman and called for a calmer and more measured approach to immigration debates. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees defended the Refugee Convention, stating that it remains as relevant today as when it was adopted. Travis King touches back in U.S. after being expelled from North Korea. The Independent. U.S. soldier Travis King has returned to the U.S. after being expelled from North Korea, according to a Defense Department official. King, 23, arrived at Joint Base San Antonio Fort Sam Houston on Tuesday, nearly 2 months after he was taken into North Korean custody for illegally entering the country. King had been detained in a South Korean penal facility before fleeing to North Korea. The U.S. government said it had successfully facilitated his departure from North Korea after months of diplomatic efforts. Oil climbs to $97 a barrel as rally continues. Financial Times. Crude oil prices are on the rise, with Brent crude heading towards $100 a barrel. This has increased fears amongst investors that high oil prices will lead to inflation. Oil prices have risen 35% since June, due to supply cuts by major producers. The rise in oil prices could also lead to higher fuel prices, which in turn could cause inflation to rise. European stocks slipped, with the Stoxx Europe 600 index down 0.1%, Germany's DAX down 0.2% and London's FTSE 100 down 0.4%. Touched by their stories, Malaysian minister wants to bring Bali bombing accused home. The Sydney Morning Herald. Malaysia is seeking to repatriate 2 alleged accomplices to the 2002 Bali bombings who are currently being held at Guantanamo Bay. Mohammed Farouk bin Amin and Mohammed Nazir bin Lep, along with Indonesian-born Hambali, were charged as accessories to the nightclub bombings in Bali and a hotel explosion in 2003. The Malaysian government is attempting to bring its 2 citizens home, as they have yet to be brought to trial before a U.S. military commission. Hambali, on the other hand, is unlikely to be repatriated to Indonesia due to concerns that he could still inspire extremists. Ant consumer finance arm to raise $616 million to revive growth. Bloomberg. Ant Group's consumer finance affiliate is raising 4.5 billion yuan, $616 million, from investors as the company seeks to revive growth after a regulatory crackdown. Ant Group will contribute 2.25 billion yuan to the plan, and other investors include Sunny Optical Technology Group Company and Transfar Company. The move comes after Chinese regulators imposed a nearly $1 billion fine on Ant Group in July, ending a 3-year-long probe into the fintech giant. The consumer finance unit combines Ant's online lending operations, Huabei and Jiebei, and has been crucial in driving growth at the company. The adoptees searching for their families, and the truth. The Guardian. Danish-Korean adoptees are demanding the truth about the adoption industry that sent them to predominantly white families in Western countries. After years of emotionally charged searches for their birth parents, often hindered by falsified records and stonewalling from those agencies, the adoptees are pushing back against a long-sustained narrative that they should simply be grateful. Last year, the DKRG filed a petition to the South Korean government's Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which has been investigating human rights abuses, asking it to look into abusive and corrupt adoption practices. In December 2022, the commission announced it would begin its initial inquiry into the applications. The cases implicate all 4 agencies authorized by the South Korean government to conduct international adoptions at the time. Among the cases is that of Brynald. The former social workers stressed how the poverty and turbulence of South Korea's past informed their choices. To an extent, Kim understood the concerns of the adoptees, but couldn't accept a condemnation of adoption as a whole, which the pair continue to view as a necessary good. If they blame us and the underdeveloped country that we were back then, we have to accept that, Kim says. But still, shouldn't they thank us, as the ones who got them to this point? Hong, who had been sitting quietly, began to cry, saying, "We feel their pain. I really want to tell them that we are listening." Jumping in, Kim says, "Back then, we really just wanted to send them as quickly as possible. All those children, 20 of them crowded in a room. Weren't they better off going than staying here where they wouldn't have been treated fairly?" Rising headwinds threaten U.S. economy's resilience. Financial Times. The U.S. economy is facing multiple risks that threaten to undermine its growth in the coming months, according to economists. These include a likely government shutdown, strikes by auto workers, rising energy costs, and the expiry of pandemic-era fiscal support. These combined factors could result in a sharp slowdown in growth in the fourth quarter, with annualized GDP growth falling to 1.3% compared to 3.1% in Q3, according to economists at Goldman Sachs. However, most economists still believe the U.S. can avoid a full recession. YNS could be losing some of the affordable housing it's funded. CBC. Nova Scotia's Affordable Housing Development Program, AHDP, is facing concerns that it has not created enough affordable housing units. The AHDP was launched in 2007 and has cost roughly $84.2 million since its inception. Of the 2,710 units funded by the AHDP, 1,965 were considered affordable units that cost tenants no more than 80% of the average market rent. However, some of these units could lose their affordable status as 15-year agreements between the Nova Scotia government and developers expire. The Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation said the average market rent for a 2-bedroom unit in Halifax is $1,449. John Lohr, Nova Scotia's Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, said the department is trying to encourage longer agreements and has been focusing on partnering with nonprofits. However, Catherine Leviton-Reid, an associate professor at Cape Breton University, said there is an incentive for for-profit developers to raise rents to market value once agreements expire. Laurie Edgar, operations director of Affirmative Ventures, a nonprofit housing organization, said the situation is dire and called for more nonprofit housing investment. First, Toronto had the cronut. Now, a new pastry has gone viral. The Toronto Star. Toronto has been hit by a craze for circular croissants, first seen in New York City, where the Lafayette Grand Café and Bakery's Supreme Croissant has been a huge hit. The croissants are made by placing a roll of croissant dough into a small cake ring between 2 perforated pans, so it keeps its uniform shape while baking. The croissants have a larger surface area than regular croissants, giving them a higher crust-to-crumb ratio. Flavors popular with Asian customers include yuzu matcha and tiramisu. Pierre Trudeau's lasting legacy 23 years after his death. The Toronto Star. In this article, the author pays tribute to Pierre Elliott Trudeau, Canada's 15th Prime Minister, who died on September 28, 2000. The author describes Trudeau as a man of great intellect and integrity who believed in individual rights and a just society. Trudeau worked to solidify Canada as a peace-loving, democratic country that championed internationalism. The author highlights some of Trudeau's accomplishments, including decriminalization of homosexual acts, liberalization of divorce and abortion laws, protection of national unity, and the promotion of global peace. The author suggests that politicians today can learn from Trudeau's dedication, integrity, courage, and reason. Graphic tales of young Canadians in New York. Damn, being 19 is weird. The Toronto Star. Canadian cousins Jillian and Mariko Tamaki have released their new book Roaming, a graphic novel about 3 Canadian girls on a spring break trip to New York City. The book explores the themes of identity and self-discovery, drawing on the cousins' own experiences of studying in university and traveling abroad. The Tamakis, who have won numerous awards for their previous graphic novels, bring depth and maturity to the story, which resonates with readers who have experienced complicated friendships and personal growth. The cousins' collaboration and unique family relationship also add depth to their storytelling. Telegraph Sport Writers' predictions for the 2023 Ryder Cup. Telegraph. The 44th Ryder Cup is set to take place this weekend, with Team Europe looking to reclaim the trophy after losing it to the USA 2 years ago. The European team, led by Luke Donald, will be aiming to protect a 30-year unbeaten streak on home soil. However, the American team, led by Zach Johnson, has 15 major wins among its 12 players, compared to Europe's 9. Predictions for the outcome of the tournament are mixed, with some experts tipping Europe for victory and others favoring the USA. Leading point scorers and rookies are also discussed, with Jon Rahm and Brian Harman among the top picks. Potential flashpoints and singles matches are also highlighted, along with possible disappointments, such as poor performances from Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth. Koepka only identifies with 3 letters at Ryder Cup, USA, not LIV. Associated Press. Brooks Koepka, the only player from the Saudi Arabian-funded LIV Golf League to make it back to the Ryder Cup, has said that he is representing the USA and not the LIV Golf League. U.S. captain Zach Johnson used one of his 6 wildcard selections on Koepka, and Koepka said he feels like he is part of a team and not an individual in the locker room. Koepka was runner-up at the Masters and won the PGA Championship, which was nearly enough to make the team on points. And that's a wrap on today's news. We've covered everything from nicknames in politics to the search for truth in adoption practices. But before we sign off, let's dive into some deeper analysis. Starting with politics, it seems like Donald Trump just can't escape the nickname game. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie attempted to brand him as Donald Duck during the presidential debate, but whether or not it sticks remains to be seen. Meanwhile, Republican donors are considering switching their support from Ron DeSantis to Nikki Haley as they search for a candidate who can take on Trump. However, even if Haley overtakes DeSantis, she still faces the challenge of beating Trump, who is currently leading the Republican field by a wide margin. It's a tough game, folks. In the UK, Conservative MP Sala Braverman has faced criticism for her alarmist speech on migration. Braverman suggested that being gay or a woman and fearing discrimination should not be enough to qualify as a refugee. This sparked concerns among fellow MPs, who called for a calmer and more measured approach to immigration debates. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees defended the Refugee Convention, stating that it remains as relevant today as when it was adopted. It's a delicate balance between protecting human rights and ensuring national security. On the international front, U.S. soldier Travis King has finally returned to the U.S. after being expelled from North Korea. King had been taken into North Korean custody for illegally entering the country and had been detained in a South Korean penal facility before fleeing to North Korea. It took months of diplomatic efforts, but the U.S. government successfully facilitated his departure. Talk about a wild adventure. Moving on to economics, crude oil prices are on the rise, with Brent crude heading towards $100 a barrel. This has investors worried about inflation and the potential for higher fuel prices. Meanwhile, the U.S. economy is facing multiple risks that could undermine its growth in the coming months. From a likely government shutdown to rising energy costs, economists are predicting a sharp slowdown in growth in the fourth quarter. But hey, at least most economists still believe the U.S. can avoid a full recession. Let's hope they're right. In other news, Malaysia is seeking to repatriate 2 alleged accomplices to the 2002 Bali bombings who are currently being held at Guantanamo Bay. The Malaysian government wants to bring its citizens home, but concerns about inspiring extremists have led to hesitation regarding repatriation. It's a tricky situation, balancing justice and security. And finally, for all you foodies out there, Toronto has been hit by a craze for circular croissants. These croissants have a larger surface area than regular croissants, giving them a higher crust-to-crumb ratio. Flavors like yuzu matcha and tiramisu are a hit with Asian customers. Move over Kronitz, there's a new pastry in town. That's all for today's news, folks. Remember, these are just snippets of the stories, so be sure to dive deeper if something catches your interest. And now it's time to hear from you. What are your thoughts on today's news? Do you have any burning questions? Let's keep the conversation going. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.